That's great. It gives me great pleasure to be chairing this latest BAPM webinar, which is a collaboration between ourselves and the International Family Integrated Care Steering Group, who you're going to hear more about over the course of the afternoon. The webinar, as you can see, is entitled Getting to Zero Separation, Prioritising Family Integrated Care for Our New Normal. And we have 5 fabulous internationally acclaimed speakers, but a fairly limited timeline. So I'm not going to say too much more at this stage, other than to remind everybody that the webinar is being recorded and will be accessible via the BAPM website in due course. And also to thank those who have already submitted questions. Those will be covered, some during the talks, some at the end. But for those who haven't submitted questions, can I just highlight the question and answers functionality so that as the talks progress, if you have questions you want to ask, type them in, your name will be attached, and then they will be looked at and then put to the panel of speakers at the end. So we're going to hear the talks first and then the questions at the end. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Liz McKechnie, who's going to talk about the importance of families as primary carers. Liz, I suspect, will be known to many of the audience, as well as being a consultant in neonatal care in Leeds. She's probably one of the leading UK clinicians in implementing the FiCare approach. She's done this in her own unit, but more than that, she's supported and helped units across the country to understand the FiCare philosophy. She's also a member of the BAPM FiCare Working Group and also the International FiCare Steering Group. And last year, she coordinated and hosted the International FiCare Conference in Leeds. Thank you very much, Liz.
That's great. Thank you very much, Judith, and thank you for asking me to speak today on a list of speakers that I feel rather humbled by, I have to say. I am speaking, as Judith says, on behalf of the International Steering Group, which is chaired by Carol O'Brien, who's part of the original group that implemented and innovated what we now know as family integrated care. And you have me because she's off somewhere camping in the Canadian wilderness and fighting bears, or her teenage sons or something, I don't know. But I'm also part, as Judith says, of the BAPM Family Integrated Care Working Group. And we are a group of healthcare professionals, parents and other stakeholders who are developing a framework for trying to implement family integrated care in units across the UK. And I'm going to draw fairly heavily on the work that we're doing in that group with this talk today, which will be a bit of basic stuff about what family integrated care is, as I know people still need to know that, but also why we think families are so important as primary carers. So I guess, even though I can't get my slides to go, sorry about that. I'll just try to share them again. So sorry about that. So what do we mean by primary carers? Well, we use that term because it's the term that's used in the literature, but it's not rocket science. It really means those that have got the main responsibility for care for an infant. That's usually the infant or the parents, but it may be foster carers, other grandparents or things like that. And what family integrated care is trying to do is to ensure that these primary carers become partners in the care of the baby. So why do we want parents as partners in care? I guess that's a pretty important question. Having a baby in a neonatal unit is an abnormal experience. I guess there are many in the audience that have had an experience like mine, where the phone goes at 3 in the morning and it's a friend in tears, panicking because their baby's just been admitted to the neonatal unit. And my friend was beside herself, and this had never really struck me before what a terrible experience this is. But many of us, when we think about having a baby, will think about a long and rather painful labour and delivery, but then as this new little life is placed upon you, an overwhelming feeling of love, of protection, of calm and serenity as this little bundle is given to you. But if you have a baby prematurely or a baby that's born sick, all of that calm, that peace, that overwhelming sense of love is ripped away from you, and you end up with something that looks a bit like this. Now, I apologise if this is anybody listening's unit. It's a picture that I lifted off the internet, but I suspect all of us can identify with that picture, with what our unit looks like sometimes, usually about 5 o'clock on a Friday afternoon. It's bright, it's noisy, it's chaotic. It's not a place that any preterm baby or new parent should really have to endure. So we know that having a baby in a neonatal unit is stressful, and there is a huge body of evidence that demonstrates that parents find this extremely stressful, and there is significant mental health issues for parents within a neonatal journey. In the short term, this might be anxiety, stress, depression, and a host of other mental health issues. But those don't disappear as the baby's discharged and walks out the front door. The long term also has significant healthcare problems. Post-traumatic stress disorder in parents of NICU babies is the same as that in Iraq war veterans, and I find that truly horrifying. We are doing some serious harm to these families, not intentionally, but we need to address that. Now, hopefully, many of you will have realised by this point in the afternoon that you're in a family integrated care webinar, and so you can guess what my next slide will be. If the question is, how can we reduce stress in parents, then this afternoon the answer has to be with family integrated care. So I can back that up with evidence, obviously. There are many different models of neonatal care. Family-centred care, close collaboration, lots of different models of care, but actually FICare is one of the better researched. After the initial pilot study that was done in Toronto, the same group carried on and did an international cluster randomised controlled trial with over nearly 1,800 babies. And since that was published in 2018, there have been several other trials that have been reported and many others that are underway. And what those show overwhelmingly is significantly reduced parent stress and anxiety, significantly improved infant weight gain and breastfeeding rates, and also benefits to a reduced length of stay, a quicker time to oral feeding, and in our own unpublished data, significantly reduced emergency visits to GPs and A&E presentations. Data coming out of China has showed that at 18 months there's improved developmental outcomes for these babies. And whilst they have a very different healthcare system to us, the Toronto group hopefully will publish soon their data that shows a similar finding. So whilst my slides will no longer move on anymore, if we just go back to what is family integrated care again, well, this is a book that was written by a very inspirational lady called Nadia Leek, and she and her husband Martin had very preterm twins born at 22 weeks and 6 days, and they experienced care in a FICare unit and a standard care unit. And in her book she says, help us to help them be the best child they can be by enabling us to be the best parents we can be from day one. And I doubt very much that there is anybody involved in neonatal healthcare that wouldn't agree with that sentiment. So you can see from that that family integrated care has to be a holistic model of neonatal care. And I'd go so far as to say it has to be a philosophy that runs through the very core of a neonatal service and is a real culture within that neonatal unit. Because what we're trying to do is to enable and empower parents to support them through a variety of means to become confident, knowledgeable and independent carers, both in the unit and after discharge. Because going back to my previous slide, we know that good parental mental health has significant benefits for long-term outcomes. The Toronto group, when they first published about FICare, talked about the 4 pillars of family integrated care upon which you can build your own programme. staff education, parent education, environment, and psychosocial support for families. But within time, this has evolved, and so we can now see these 4 pillars slightly differently: empowerment, well-being, staff education, and environment. And excuse the rather busy slide, but just going through each of these separately. Parental empowerment is essential, and we can do this through educating parents, mentoring them, and coaching them. It's essential that we look after their mental health and their well-being. And Toronto developed a programme of veteran parents, which are a group of volunteer parents who've been through the neonatal journey with their own children, and they volunteer to come back and provide either one-to-one support for families or group support. And it's been really highly regarded by parents that are going through the neonatal service. What I would say is that those parents that are the volunteers do need support themselves, because sometimes things trigger negative emotions for them. So if you're going to go down that route, ensure you've got some sort of support for them. And don't forget about your own staff well-being, because if you've got staff that are valued and listened to and feel empowered, they will deliver a much better quality of family integrated care. They need to be educated both about what you're trying to deliver and about adult learning, so that they can actually deliver the education to parents and the coaching and the mentoring. Environmental changes may need to be made. I think most units now will have some sort of kitchen and chill out room and facilities for staff, but we need to start thinking outside the box. Siblings of parents with a baby on the neonatal unit are very difficult to deal with for parents. They're torn between looking after the children at home and the babies on the unit. And so trying to deliver some sort of sibling support is really key to helping these families cope with what they're going through. Over all of this, we need to remember the basic premise of what we're trying to do. We're trying to ensure that parents are partners in care. And that is the key to the whole family integrated care ethos. Another question often asked is why is family-centred care different to family integrated? Family-centred care is part of family integrated care. Both have similarities. They have a family-centred NICU design, so shared spaces with kitchens and restrooms, policies and protocols that are family friendly, so 24-hour access, good visiting policies for other members of the family. There should be educational and psychological support services for families and for the clinical team. But there are things in addition which FICare has. FICare expects parents to become involved in their baby's care. And this should be done at the parent's own pace and in their own time, and to whichever level that the parent feels confident. We ask them to contribute to ward rounds, and in some units this will be a formal presentation, perhaps with a cheat sheet that parents can use, or in other units like our own, it's more of an informal discussion where the healthcare team and the parents very much discuss how the baby is and what the plan is for the day. We ask parents to learn to contribute to documentation, so that might be documenting weights or temperatures, and all of these new skills that parents learn should be signed off, assessed competencies, which are supported by guidelines and protocols, and that helps address the legal aspects of family integrated care. And finally, a formal programme of education and peer support. So, in summary, family integrated care has to be a philosophy and a culture of the unit that is delivering it. It's about recognising and respecting parents as parents and their significant role in a baby's health care journey. And we can do this through education, coaching, psychological support for parents and staff. And we know that it has significant benefits for families, babies and staff in the short and long term. And not only that, but if you talk to your managers and commissioners, it's also financially beneficial. You can introduce that philosophy and culture for free, and you will have significant long-term outcomes. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liz. That set the scene perfectly, and I would agree that Nadia's book is absolutely inspirational. Thank you very much. So now we're going to hear the results of an international survey of the impact of COVID-19 on patient and family-centred care. We're going to hear this from Linda Frank, who joins us from San Francisco, where she holds the Jack and Elaine Cohen Endowed Chair in Paediatric Nursing at the University of California. Now, interestingly, she rejoined the University of California in 2010, having spent a decade at University College London Institute of Child Health, where she was the first chair of children's nursing research in the UK. Her current research interests focus on improving patient and family partnered healthcare services and research for women, children and families. Thank you, Linda.
All right, well, I want to also thank BAPM for the wonderful opportunity to share some hot off the press findings from our survey of the impact of COVID-19 related hospital restrictions on patient and family centered care. It's great to be back in the UK, even if just virtually. And I just want to point out that I've spelled family centered care correctly on this slide. But I have to say the rest of the slides are in American English, and for that I apologize. I want to begin my brief remarks by thanking the fantastic team who worked with me to complete this rapid survey work. It was a true collaborative effort with contributions from the Institute of Patient and Family Centered Care, Beverly Johnson and Marie Abraham, and colleagues at University of California, San Francisco, Rebecca Chris, Patience Aflawani, and Jerry Neuter, and colleagues in University of Washington, Molly Altman. And I also want to thank the California Preterm Birth Initiative who supported this work, and the communication teams who helped us really get that done. So moving right along, the concerns about hospital provision of family-centered care during a global crisis are not new. In 2006, Liz Crocker and Bev Johnson published a chapter in their book, Privileged Presence, about the negative impact of the 2003 SARS epidemic on family-centered care. And then in 2010, the IPFCC followed with a white paper that outlined steps that healthcare organizations should take in planning for the next pandemic. They advised that it's important to take steps not only to contain the illness, but to also remember that family members are stewards of patient safety and integral to patient and family well-being. However, not everybody has listened. And in mid-March, when the COVID-19 surge hit the US, hospitals such as this major academic medical center closed their doors to all family and support persons in the name of safety, despite the absence of evidence of any spread from family members. And in this instance, a national outcry followed on social media and in the press. So about 2 weeks after that, the New York governor issued a reversal of that policy. And after that, the WHO clarified their guidance specific to newborn care, and really came out very strongly that newborns and their mother should not be separated shortly after birth. But the concerns about overly restricted hospital policies have persisted, and it was really difficult to find any information about what was happening on the front lines. So with that background, we quickly designed a survey to try to gather information about family presence in hospitals and ambulatory care settings around the world, and to learn how hospitals were partnering with patients and families in changing and implementing these new policies. Our methods were pretty straightforward. We quickly got research ethics approval and posted an online survey on our various websites from May 8th to July 31st when the survey closed. And we did a lot of outreach through websites, professional groups, and targeted emails to hospital contacts to try to spread the word about the survey. And respondents could report on hospital-wide practices and policies or for specific patient care settings. The respondents, by the closing date, we had received 697 responses, of which 541 were complete, at least had completed one section of the survey. And these respondents represented 395 unique hospitals and health systems. All respondents reported that hospital policy changes had occurred because of the COVID-19 pandemic, and specifically regarding family presence. I just want to first show you a quick snapshot of the hospital-wide results. We asked how many support persons were permitted at the patient's bedside by setting. And as you can see, most of the adult patient settings were not permitting any support persons to accompany patients. The maternity care areas and pediatric settings predominantly permitted one support person with the patient, but some of the neonatal and pediatric settings were permitting two support persons. So we found that quite interesting. And now let's take a closer look at the neonatal and pediatric care settings. And I will just give you some selected responses from that. And I showed the other pediatric settings just for comparison purposes. So respondents for this part of the survey were primarily from North America, with about a quarter from Europe and one UK setting represented. Respondents were primarily unit leaders or direct care providers. Now, in this question, we asked how COVID-19 related policy changes impact the 4 domains of patient and family-centered care. You can see that just in this panel, just about 20% of the units reported negative effects of the policies on their ability to provide respectful and dignified care. And a few even reported that that area had improved, whereas 40% reported that policies had negatively affected information sharing. The majority of NICUs reported negative impact on patient and family participation in care planning, and also on patient and family support related to these policy changes. There were some differences in the proportion across the pediatric settings, but they may not be significant. We then asked the question specifically about impact on healthcare disparities. And here you can see that 50% of the NICUs reported a negative impact. This was in contrast to the general pediatric wards, where respondents more often reported no impact or a slight improvement, although the numbers are small. We then asked a series of questions about what had been put in place to support family members during the pandemic. And for those family members who were permitted to be present, most, but by no means all, of the sites provided personal protective equipment. And about half or less produced access to free or subsidized meals, transportation, or overnight accommodation. But the numbers of NICUs providing these services were notably less than the other pediatric care settings. So we must ask ourselves and our hospital administrator colleagues why this must be so, when the need for proper nutrition and proximity to the infant is essential for breastfeeding, for example. Notably, mental health services were more often available for NICU infant support persons, but the numbers of sites representing this was also quite small. For family members who were not permitted or weren't able to be with the baby, about 60% of the sites encouraged the use of technology. About a third offered or encouraged use of specific software or apps, or provided access to support persons such as a family liaison. Fewer loaned devices to families, and very few had policies or guidance around how to keep devices clean, something we might consider. And then there were some small differences in access by the unit type, but again, these were not large differences. Additionally, family members who were not permitted or weren't able to be with their baby were offered the possibility of participating remotely in rounds in about 30% of the NICUs and general pediatric wards, and about 50% of the PICUs. 60% of the NICUs and PICUs made daily calls to non-present parents, but fewer sites provided the option of remote family meetings or assisted in helping families with access to video calls with their ill child or partners. And again, mental health services were rarely provided. And finally, we asked if common interactions between the clinical team and patient and families had changed, and most reported a dramatic change in rounds communication compared to other situations. So in summary, this very brief, hot off the press snapshot of our survey results focused on the COVID-19 hospital policy impact on family-centered care has shown hospital leaders and providers perceive that family-centered care has indeed been negatively affected. And for NICUs in particular, the impact has been most profound in reducing family support and participation in care planning, and in widening the disparities in care. We found substantial variation in policy and practice across settings and variable efforts to mitigate the impact of the restrictions. We hope to continue this work and more formally establish a registry for ongoing tracking of COVID hospital policies on patient and family-centered care, and to conduct further surveys, interviews, and analyses to understand the various hospital policy and practices, and to work with colleagues, such as everyone on this webinar, to share the best evidence-based practices available and also new innovations. Although these results may not surprise you, I feel that they're really a call to action to us all. I hope you will visit our website and peruse these initial results in more detail on your own time. And we will be posting next week a link to register your unit or your hospital to take part in the future surveys and interviews. And I hope you'll help us share this link widely and help recruit many more NICUs and hospitals to register and participate, and check the site regularly for updates. And most importantly, I urge you to advocate for evidence-based practices that include families as full partners with the healthcare team to working together to promote safety and quality and healthy babies. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Linda. That was absolutely wonderful. I think it's been traumatic for staff implementing all of these COVID-related policies, which are completely counterintuitive, and actually having evidence with which to go to managers and discuss where we go from here is so invaluable. Now we're having a little change in order from the published programmes. So rather than Nils Next, we're going to go to the challenge of getting to zero separation. And we're going to hear about this from Nicole van Wienendaal, who is a clinician, researcher and epidemiologist working in the Netherlands. Her specific interests are within human development and neonatal care, and in particular, the impact of FICare on preterm infants and their parents. She's established a FICare programme in her own department and coordinated a European-wide initiative known as the Crown Initiative. Her passion for FICare is driven by the importance of the partnership with parents, which she describes as absolutely key for the rest of the child's life. And her research aims to demonstrate both the short and the longer term benefits of FICare. Thank you, Nicole.
So thank you very much for this introduction, Judith. And as you told, I'm going to tell you something about the Crown Initiative, which is on creating room and opportunities on wards for newborns and their families. And just a short introduction, I'm from the Netherlands, which is this very small country. Just across the pond, we're known for our tulips and our windmills. And I work in Amsterdam with the beautiful canals. You can even skate on them. And I work at a large city hospital. This was our neonatal department quite a long time ago. And as Judith told you, I'm an epidemiologist. I'm very keen on statistics, but this is actually a different story. So I work at a department in which we have family integrated care in single family rooms, and we have a full integration of maternal and neonatal services. We can take care of mom and of infant next to each other and never having to separate them. And we had this question, how are other hospitals delivering their maternal and newborn care? But before we can answer this question, we need to ask, what do parents find important when we talk about FICare? So that's where we started off. We asked this question to our parent organization in the Netherlands, and we looked at European standards. And we asked 48 parents what they found was very important, and 46 mothers and 2 fathers responded. And the most important thing is parent-infant separation. Parents found that very, very important to ask when you talk about FICare practices. Other things that were deemed important were possibility to room in, what they can do in care, if they can participate in medical rounds, if parents can perform kangaroo care. So families actually put closeness at the heart of family integrated care in this study. So we set off to look at units in the Netherlands, but as you know, and as you see, the Netherlands is very small. So what we did was we did interviews with leading centers in family-centered and family-integrated care units in Europe. And we used 19 parent-rated questions, and we did semi-structured interviews. We used the 4 pillars of FICARE, and we also did qualitative analysis with parents. So this is very important to not only research what the role of parents is in your NICU, but actually do the research together with parents. So it started off with a snowball and it became a big avalanche. We interviewed 44 units in Europe and 1 unit in Canada, and they are depicted here from Sweden to Italy, from Ukraine to Ireland. We have a broad range here. So one of the most staggering results was that mother-infant separation is very, very common. Almost all units have to separate their mothers and infants due to infant care or, I'm sorry, something came up. This is a very staggering result. Then for family-centered rounds were done in less than half. Education sessions for parents or education sessions for professionals were also done in less than half of these units. And what we were interested in were factors for success. So if we talk about family integrated care and we have closeness at the heart, what makes for successful implementation of closeness? And we came up with these 4 factors, and you might recognize some of them from her talk. So let's start off with culture. So culture are jointly held characteristics, values, thinking, and behaviors of people in workplaces and organizations. And here are some quotes. So it could be very natural. It's within the culture of the unit. The nurses are usually really upset if the parents are not there. They come to the doctor and complain. There are alarm clocks ringing if the parents are not there. But other units also told me they were reluctant. I think staff don't want parents around because parents look on their hands. Other factors for success were deemed within the theme of collaboration. So collaboration is the act of working together. Parents, it's kind of promoted that everybody has their own important role to play. Parents carry that 6th sense. But also on the staff level, sometimes we have an agreement with the maternity ward that they come and supervise us and take care of the mother and they can stay with their child. And then about family-centered rounds, which were deemed very important. I think family-centered rounds are very wise. Parents could give us a lot of information about the infant. But also some burdens were there that parents could not be there because the parents cannot be in the unit due to confidentiality questions. Next off were capacities. So capacities are resources of supply or support, and these can either be physical, human, or policies. So let's start off with physical. Some units had a maternity ward in another building, definitely separating mothers from their infants. So this was on a hospital level separation. And the big difficulty for us is space. You know, we've got several babies in a room with lots of equipment, and it's very difficult. So I think also resources, physical resources, are very important in units for parents to be close. Human capacities. We don't like to give an intravenous catheter on the maternity ward, as it is a very busy ward, and if these nurses need to take care of these babies, then they don't take care of other babies. They do not have time to do everything. And other capacities were policies, such as early discharge programs, open access policies, and free meals and free parking for parents to be able to be present continuously. The last factor for success was coaching. Coaching is acquiring and transferring knowledge and skill. We've had this educational rotation Our NICU nurses went to the prenatal and postnatal ward, and midwives were on our unit for periods. So definitely they were educating each other, also probably in a very collaborative nature. And the other one is you need to provide education for staff because they support families involved. That's a big part of what happens. When a new nurse starts in the unit, they are orientated in integrated care and coached by a parent. So definitely you can also see the partnership here and the role of parents as being advocates and also knowledgeable about their infant and NICU stay. So put them all together and you get the 4 C's of closeness. So enabling these 4, you can maybe achieve a little bit more closeness in your unit and therefore enable more FICARE. And in conclusion, from our research, mother-infant separation during periods of neonatal or maternal care is very common, and focusing on these 4 C's can result in better FICARE practices. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nicole. I love the concept of the 4 C's, and the quotes are an incredibly powerful way of getting the message over. That was brilliant. Thank you. So next we're jumping back now, and we're going to hear about why zero separation is so very important. We're going to hear this from Nils Bergman, who's a very interesting man who describes himself as a public health physician. And since 2005, he has promoted and researched skin-to-skin contact on a full-time basis. He's also a research associate at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden and was consultant to a recently completed randomized controlled trial on immediate kangaroo mother care with the World Health Organization. He's previously worked in South Africa, Zimbabwe and Sweden, and his last employment was as Senior Medical Superintendent of the Mowbray Maternity Hospital in Cape Town, South Africa, where he oversaw 18,000 births each year. Okay, thank you very much, Nils.
So that's a title that I've been given. I'm very happy with it. Thank you. Why zero separation, maternal neonatal separation and toxic stress. And if you go to your program, next slide, you'll see that the reason is for our new normal. Getting to zero separation is about prioritizing family integrated care. And you get my thumbs up for that. So what's the new normal? Next slide. What's wrong with the old normal? All sorts of reasons are given in the next slide. We've always separated and our outcomes are improving. Separation is necessary for our technology. I was separated, my family, kids were separated, and then there are some real issues. Sepsis is a killer, sterility, and the intensive care unit is not a good place for families. Yeah, you've heard these things. So, where are we with this? Next slide. Actually, it's not true that our outcomes are improving all the time. If you see slide 6, that it's for the last 20 years, our outcomes have not improved at all. Our technology has improved, but our outcomes have not done so. Next slide. We've always separated. Yes, we're always in our own memories. But if we look more deeply into our science, and I have a quote here a picture from Jaak Panksepp, we've had 30 million years of zero separation. The separation is just more than 100 years old. And as you see in the next slide, Jaak Panksepp describes the foundations of human and animal emotions out of the DNA, out of brain development and out of behavior, life sciences theory, evolutionary biology, I've called it there. So slide 9 there says, why zero separation? Because our DNA expects mother's body. The environment is critical for the DNA to work. The brain works critically in an environment, and that environment creates a particular behavior. Now, from primate study, next slide, we know that the behavior when you separate a mother from the baby is the most severe form of stress known, toxic stress. Slide 11 shows a picture of Myron Hofer, and he describes how it's the mother-infant, parent-infant interactions that are regulating regulation. And the separation is the absence of regulation. The absence of regulation is what is causing toxic stress, mediated by cortisol. So here's the raw substance of the title of my talk. Cortisol changes in early life on the blank slate of the DNA, epigenetic settings that control how many cortisol receptors there are going to be. And when they are switched off, cortisol is high in the brain and the bloodstream and the body. And this results in health impact across the lifespan. Slide 14 shows the iconic experiment, and we don't have much time to look at it, but I have described it. And then slide 15, early stress alters gene expression with health impact across the lifespan. Now, this is studies from mice, but more studies have shown that toxic stress actually operates globally in biology and profoundly impacts human infants. Our outcomes have not improved for 20 years. So zero separation is about toxic stress. This impacts not just the biology and the neurology of the baby, but also the parent, and creates a vulnerability. So separation was our normal. What's the new normal? Well, the new normal is the same as the very old normal, which is regulation by mother-infant interaction. Breastfeeding is the key interaction that we're seeing here in biology. Maybe not so clever for family integrated care where you don't see a breast in a 1,000-gram baby. But actually, next slide, it's the emotional connection and the interaction between mother and baby that creates resilience, in contrast to vulnerability. So why zero separation? The slide 20 shows here, health comes out of resilience. That green bar with yellow health print is the resilience in the population. That contrasts with the disease in the population. That disease is across the lifespan because it's a vulnerability to factors that we can't defend ourselves against. Now, more so for preterm infants. So it's in the context of those preterm infants that I've coined this phrase, nurture science, slide 21. Nurture and science sound like an oxymoron. Oxymoron is a contradiction of two words. Are they contradictory? Yes, if I have a scientific care method in an intensive care unit, that's not the place for the family, would be the kind of statement that would be said. So I want to step away from some science and provide you the 4 ethical principles that are enumerated in slide 23. So when we have evidence-based medicine and when we apply a lot of technology, our primum non nocere, first do no harm, is about risk reduction. That's how evidence is defined. But next slide shows that we have 4 ethical principles carrying equal weight. It's not enough not to do harm, it's also necessary to do good. So to do good is to provide the mother-infant interaction, slide 23, onto slide 24. Health enhancement has to also be there together with risk reduction. Both are ethical mandates. The key is that risk reduction does not achieve resilience. It's the resilience that we've lost when we've separated babies. Why zero separation? Slide 29 provides you with some scientific kind of answers about a list of bullet points. Why zero separation? We need the microbiota, we need bonding, we need immunity, we need a host of factors. Yes, slide 30, we need risk reduction. We need to have maternal sensitivity. We need to avoid the bad things that we can measure. So I'm back to nurture science, a single phrase, a single word, and critical deliverable. We have to provide both ethically beneficence and non-maleficence. So the nurture science I've described as this picture on slide 32. And if you need to see more details than I can do in 12 minutes, there are these 2 publications on slide 33. But I thought I would use a minute or 2 as I have available, and I've stressed myself and your time. I apologize sincerely. Why zero separation? Well, you've said that yourselves, there's a new normal. What I'd like to share with you now is that what does this normal look like? Slide 36. Zero separation means literally that zero separation starts at birth. and I speak to this out of a normal full-term birth in this first slide 36, the family is born in the labor ward. The father must be present at the birth. Now, if the birth is a preterm baby, that applies all the more. But slide 37, it's about all babies, every single baby. This is our biology. Then we say in slide 38, for the small and the sick baby, this is more important, not less important. If the full-term baby needs this desperately to survive, how many more times does the preterm baby need this to survive? So these pictures that you're now seeing from here onwards are from the randomized controlled trial that you heard in the introduction, and from the Swedish, Norwegian equivalent called Epistos. I shall share that in a moment. So slide 39. Here you see a Norwegian baby being born, and in 1 minute it's been covered, it's had CPAP put on, it's been warmed, it's been calmed, and the cord has not been cut. This is immediate at birth, zero separation. Zero separation also means that it's continuous. It means that procedures are done skin to skin, and the experience is that those procedures turn out better and easier and are quite feasible. It also means that the mother is doing it 24 hours. It means she has to sleep. But to sleep, she needs safe technique. And I saw in the questions that there was a question about safe technique. There's a great deal of detail about the safe technique, and we've developed a garment for such. Here you see it being used even on twins. But particularly zero separation means that you can do safe skin to skin even during the mother's sleeping. We can use others to do this, as you'll see in a moment. But sleep and breastfeeding are two critical deliverables for the well-being of babies. And so breastfeeding, even, you see in the picture on slide 43, a baby that's on CPAP, a baby that's on any kind of technology, slide 44, it means doing skin to skin with technology. This requires a different kind of skill set. Even before that, slide 45, we're transporting babies in skin to skin. Now, a few more slides. The new thing we've discovered that really has come out of the randomized controlled trial with the World Health Organization, but that's been developed for 20 years, is the family integrated NICU, mother NICU. And so slide 46 shows a mother bed in the neonatal intensive care unit. Slide 47 shows that the obstetric care team are doing their ward rounds on one side of the bed, while the neonatal care team are doing the ward rounds on the other side of the bed at the same moment in this particular picture that my colleague Björn has provided for this talk today. So this means profound systems change. Here you see a father inside, on slide 48, inside the operating room, having a cesarean section and doing skin to skin, a grandmother doing skin to skin on twins with CPAP. You see a father and mother doing triplets. Profound systems change. So zero separation means a profound systems change. I like this quote that says, everybody's in favor of progress, slide 49. Nobody likes change. But for our new normal, profound systems change is necessary. Nobody wants this change. But let me not finish just on that point. The next slide, 50, shows the protocols of both the trials that you've seen these photographs from. So why zero separation? I said earlier that there were 4 principles carrying equal weight in decision making. And we spoke about do no harm, but also do good. Justice is that we must do good to every baby. Respect for autonomy is informed consent and such things. And all those 4 things have equal weight, except in children, where the respect for autonomy is highest, but they don't have autonomy. Why it becomes highest is that in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, on human rights of the child, it states the best interests of the child are paramount. So this is my final conclusion. Why should we have zero separation? Yes, there's maternal neonatal toxic stress. And if we want prioritizing family integrated care for our new normal, it's not too much trouble. It's absolutely critical. The best interests of the child are paramount. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Niels. That was absolutely amazing. A tour de force, made all the more remarkable by the fact that you were on the end of the phone and your slides were separated from you. That was fantastic. I'm sure there will be questions at the end for that. And it takes us nicely on to our final speaker, Silke Mader, who is going to talk about the Global Alliance for Newborn Care and why we need to have a global voice for preterm and sick newborns and their families. Silke, as I suspect many of you will know, has been a passionate and very influential advocate for maternal and newborn care for well over the last 2 decades. As a former patient herself who suffered from HELLP syndrome and the mother of preterm twin babies born at 25 weeks gestation, she's used all of that personal experience to work to improve care for parents, preterm babies and sick newborns. She recognises that a very strong partnership between health professionals and parents is the best way to face what is the very emotional rollercoaster of a journey of a preterm or sick baby. And this in turn led to her establishing the European Foundation for the Care of the Newborn in 2008, and in turn the development of the European Standards of Care for Newborn Health. She's also the co-founder of the Global Alliance for Newborn Care. Thank you very much, Silke.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry it kicked, I don't know why, but it kicked me out. So I would like to share now my presentation. I hope it's working. So do you see it?
I think we're going to need to share it from this end. Just give Marcus a second.
Okay, should I, oh, here we are.
Oh, super, perfect. Thank you. I'm going to apologize again. Yeah, first of all, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share also the patient's perspective and the patient voice in the discussion of zero separation. So I really got a very good platform from the previous speakers of sharing the need of why families and why parents need to be not separated from their child. And there are millions of years where we were not separated. And since we have the technology, it is the case. As my introduction, you see, I'm not a medical professional. I'm a patient representative. I was a preschool teacher in my previous life before I started being an advocate for this issue, and having this experience of myself being separated for several months from my child, even in the time where my second child, our twin, died. It was really challenging to cope somehow with the situation. And being now for more than 23 years an advocate for this, I realized very quickly that's not only the case here in Germany, it's really the case all over the world. And so therefore we founded first an organization called EFCNI, so an European organization. And just last year we initiated the Global Alliance for Newborn Care. So, but why have we initiated? So after we have founded the European organization, it is the case that we have not a voice for patients and for parents all over the world. In my role as an European advocate, I was invited quite often at the WHO or UNICEF meetings, and I realized that we in our area of living in a rich area, living in a white culture area, we have quite, we have in the meanwhile a voice. We founded World Prematurity Day, we established European standards, so we really had, well, not the perfect voice, and we had not really a total no separation policy, but family-centered care was somehow established and also in many cases also implemented, but it was not the case when we talked about the global perspective. So this is why we thought it is important to have a global voice and also exchange knowledge between patients and parent representatives to translate this knowledge, what you as healthcare professionals provide to the whole audience of parents and patients. And so therefore our organization has grown a lot in the last years. But even in some areas in the world where there is not the voice, especially in research trials, in policy and advocacy levels, parents and patients had not really the voice as we wanted. So therefore we felt responsible to establish a global organization where parents and patients patients really have a voice, and where we not talk anymore on allowing parents to be part of this journey or to visiting hours in the unit. So we really want to be welcomed in the unit. These are our babies. We giving you in the NICUs our babies to take care of them, but we are not visitors and we should not be allowed to be there. So if we have heard before, it is natural that parents are together with the babies, and so therefore it's important to stand up for this, like you as healthcare professionals are doing this now in the same way, for talking about family integrated care, talking about developmental care, because it's not only about integrating us, it's also that the brain develop well, that we have a good and healthy growth, so that breastfeeding is really supported. And so therefore we thought we have to combine forces together with healthcare professionals and create a global voice glance. So the vision and the mission of GLANCE is really reducing the mortality and the morbidity in this area. So preterm deliveries and preterm babies are the biggest patient group in the world. So we have also a huge mortality and morbidity rate when babies are born preterm or when they're born too tiny or too sick. So therefore it's really important to reduce the rates. It's also important that we decrease the burden of these families. I can talk from myself that I really struggle still today. My son is 23 years old and we struggle into a normal life. Lucas goes to university, but being not a preschool teacher and having not this voice in the meanwhile here in Germany, Lucas would not be in the university. He would be for sure in some disability institutions and had not the opportunity to go to a high school. That was really a fight with several governmental institutions, and not everyone has a mother like me, and so therefore it's not fair to have in the end only such parents to be able to go to a high school when you are born preterm. So there are many challenges parents face. So therefore it's really important to have equal access also after discharge, healthcare access, but also education access, integration, social activities where preemies really struggle in the real life after discharge from a NICU. And so there are a lot of challenges where even in poor countries or where parents have not the voice, like I have developed this is something what we really have to establish. So our area, we are really focusing also on the girls and women health. So to prevent preterm birth, we want to ensure a healthy pregnancy and a good start when the baby is born, the optimal treatment and care situation in the NICU, and also not thinking only until this time in the NICU, so really on long-term follow-up and continuous care of these tiny babies, because many of them have really consequences lifelong, and therefore we have to reduce this in providing the optimal care after discharge and also a longer time like my son until adulthood, because we know that many of them have challenges lifelong. Realizing this is advocacy, of course, needed. A lot of policy work we have to do. We have to talk about it to raise awareness, campaigning, research. What we have heard today already has to be done more, and maternal and newborn health needs another focus. We have a lot of focus, for example, in cancer or in cardiovascular diseases, but research money for maternal and newborn health is really rare. So therefore we have to have more research, but research where patients are integrated also in the research trials, are part of the research, are informed and are an equal partner. We also think that education, what we have heard before, is really essential, not only for healthcare professionals, also for patients and patient advocates, and we have to network and see this really as a common journey and a common start to work here together on a global level. So starting this last year without having any cent of money was the ideal idea of EFCNI. We have so far only a grant for a research trial, what we are establishing at the moment, but we have registered this organization or institution 2 years ago. We wanted to ensure that really patients get a voice and that it is not an organization only on baby care issues, really that the patients create create this voice. We could represent this initiative already at the Every Newborn Action Plan meeting last year in New York. I'm also sitting in the Every Newborn Action Plan advisory board so that patients more and more get a voice. We have founded this initiative last year where Corona not happened at this time here in Munich in last summer, where only patient representatives were, you see this picture here where we met here in Munich, and we agreed that we really need a voice for us parents and us patients all over the world. The launch of the whole communication activities was last year on World Prematurity Day, and we had already a digital meeting. Originally it was planned, of course, in person, but we couldn't because of the pandemic. This year the meeting in June, where we had, or in May, where we discussed the first steps of the organization. We have a website, so you can go on our website and find more information, what we want to do, what we want to achieve. And we already have a couple of projects in this organization, and we hope that we can help in the future, that everywhere where we talk about newborn health, where we talk about preterm infants, we have a patient representative with us. We developed a global call to action, and you see here many logos who have joined us, many organizations, parent organizations, big international organizations, but also societies, healthcare societies, like the British Association of Perinatal Medicine have joined us here. And we really call for equal access to healthcare for every baby born preterm and sick, and that we really work together hand in hand, and zero separation is one of the big aims in our initiative. We have a quite tough roadmap developed. So you see in the very beginning, just 2 years, what we have already established. But our really big plan is that until 2040, so from now on in 20 years, we have in every area in the world really an umbrella organization of patient representatives. We have in each country a patient representative. And the majority of the patient representatives are in the industrial world. That means in Australia, Canada, US, or here in Europe. But if you go more in the middle and low income countries, you're really lacking of voices of patients and parents. And so therefore, it's an open door where parents and patients get not a voice in this area. And we have to be honest here as well. It is a woman issue, so therefore it is really challenging in some regions of the world that women get a voice and that mothers really get the voice they needed for their baby, and the baby has no voice. Also, it's challenging there because the babies and children cannot speak for themselves. So it's a very ambitious time frame, but we have established in the last 12 years EFCNI, and World Prematurity Day was also a challenge in the beginning, but now the majority of the community here knows this day very well. So now we have the pandemic, and we talk today about zero separation, and especially in this time, and as we heard from the previous speakers, it's really important to talk about zero separation and what was already wrong before the pandemic came. And we have to be honest here as well. In the majority of the countries, parents were separated even before COVID, and we are really scared as parent community that even the old reality or normality is coming back after the pandemic. And so therefore we have every second week calls with our parent organizations. We have more than 100 parent organizations around the globe, and we have every second Friday a call where we try to convince them, to give them the power back they had before, or to help them to really come over this really terrible situation we have in the NICUs worldwide. We have countries where parents are totally separated, have no access at all to their baby. We have countries where they have 5 minutes, 10 minutes a week, or some have them only for a day. And we all know, and we have heard, I guess, a lot of evidence now why it is so harmful, and why we as healthcare professionals and community should talk about it and to stop the separation in this time of COVID, and eve, and of course also afterwards. What we have done so far, so because of this really scary situation for our parents and parent organizations, we have developed a frequently asked questionnaire where we provide them evidence-based answers of all the questions they have sent to us, and have developed this with key opinion leaders, but also with the World Health Organization and with UNICEF and with many other societies. So you can provide this link to your parents' communities. You can have a look on it. So it's nothing really where parents get scared. It's really something where they can find answers, but also in UK Bliss or in Ireland, Tiny Life is providing information. So many of our parent organizations are doing this. You find also other languages in the meanwhile. We hope that our parents soon can provide more answers in more languages, because not everybody is, of course, fluent in English. What we are doing on top, we have seen the survey before from Linda. We are also doing on the survey, and this is the survey where we get at the moment funding from a big donation from Novartis. And here we ask the parents themselves, because you have asked before the healthcare professionals and asked them of their opinion. We want the opinion and the feedback of the parents, because sometimes that is a different answer what we get there. And we also ask how often they had access. We ask what kind of support they had were provided, were they able to touch the baby, or were they able to kangaroo the baby, how often they could see the baby, what consequences this had for them. And so we hope we can publish this in the beginning of next year. And we have translated, and this is really fantastic, we have more than 20 languages we can provide this survey, and we hope really we get a global overview of the situation, how much parents really suffer, or maybe also we get a positive feedback how many NICUs really provided in the end this kind of support in having a zero separation policy. So we hope that also when you hear about this survey, and it's going around end of this month for minimum 2 months, and we hope that we get a lot of feedback here. And it's also has already the ethical approval, so, and it's also proven from parents at the moment. So we hope that end of this month we can provide this. And zero separation was for us really key, as we heard that some NICUs really closed totally their access to parents. Parents were full of fear, what happens with their children, what happens in the end, long-term consequences of a total separation policy, that we said, okay, we cannot accept this. EFC&I has started years ago this policy of zero separation, of a welcoming policy in the NICUs. How can we help? So we started this initiative in July, called the campaign Zero Separation Together for Better Care, because we know that many healthcare professionals like you are supporting us in the zero separation policy. And we have rolled out it in July in 27 languages. And our main focus, and our main focus here is the breastfeeding aspect, because how should breastfeeding and human milk work when you have not access to your baby? What is the lung disease aspects, especially when it comes to the RSV or flu season this autumn? What should we do here when we talk about zero separation, the infection rate, and the COVID pandemic? What happens later when the babies in the meanwhile are young adults like my son? What consequences has the COVID pandemic for these young adults, teenagers or children? So we want to really talk about this issue, want to raise awareness that we not talk only about the small tiny babies, but also the ones who are already discharged and are young adults. What is the consequences of the pandemic? What are the mental health situations when parents are separated for such a long time? What are the consequences? We have heard about this toxic environment when we are really separating them. And we have heard also about the discharge and going home situation. We hear that many appointments in therapies, in follow-up appointments are cancelled. What are the healthcare consequences of the cancellations for many weeks and months when they have no physiotherapy, no occupational therapy? What are the consequences of this lack of providing this healthcare support for these tiny babies? So that is really something we haven't thought about this yet. So we have to talk about it. What and how can here be provided, and how can we support these families when they are going home in this pandemic situation? And we talk a lot about mothers and about our situation, but we forget quite often the fathers, other family members like siblings. We talk not about other partners or family members who are now in the situation that they cannot see their baby. And we have heard that in several countries, fathers are totally forbidden to join or to join now this journey. So they are excluded from the care of their children. And even in countries where we would be able to provide this kind of support, fathers are totally excluded. So they allow parents, only one of the parents, not both, and also not other family members. And how can we in the end ensure that we really in the end not harm, that we not forget that this pandemic is of course a high risk for other staff members, but what is the risk factor really when we separate fathers for 4.5 months or even longer from their child, and what kind of consequences or mental health aspects has this for the whole family? So we have to think about not to harm. How can we provide a zero separation policy? What needs to be done? How can we support them? Because we should have in mind that these babies will have a long life in front of them, and we should really think about what can we do. So we hope that you will join us. This campaign will go until next year. After the pandemic hopefully is somehow over in the future. But we also have to think about the time after the pandemic. How can we ensure that zero separation is the normality? Thank you very much. I show you also here the organizations who have joined us. Also here we are grateful that we have such a close relationship to the British Association of Perinatal Medicine, but also many other British colleagues. So thank you for supporting us, and we hope that you will join us. And I would like to close with one message from our parents, that the years of work they have done should not be over, so that really they think about the zero separation policy now in the pandemic situation, but also afterwards. And our chair committee has provided a very impressive quote that we should think about not to harm. So therefore, separation of babies and parents is really harmful. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you take care of all the messages you have heard today, so that parents really can be with their babies. The babies are the babies of the parents, and when we want that these babies really develop healthy and have not really severe long-term consequences of this pandemic, think wise to keep this important couple together, the parents and the baby. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Silke. That was wonderful. What you've achieved is truly humbling, and you are an inspiration to us all. Neil, Cheryl, do you want to facilitate the question and answers?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so I'm Cheryl Battersby. I'm a neonatologist down in London. Delighted to be facilitating this Q&A with Neil Patel. And yeah, so we've had great questions come in pre the meeting, and some with the Q&A today as well. So thank you very much for submitting your questions. And there are a couple I thought worked. I might ask actually Liz, if you would mind asking these. That's okay. I think it was quite relevant to the talk you just gave. So Liz, there's a question about how can we ensure that units are truly, offering family integrated care rather than just saying they are?
I think that's really difficult. I know that there's a lot of lip service paid to things. When it comes to family-centred care, everybody will probably be aware of the Bliss Baby Charter and the audit tool that goes along with that and their accreditation. And I'm part of a group that's actually rewriting that at the moment. And it won't change that much, but there will be a couple of additional things put in it that will try to measure family integrated care. And I think unless anybody's got any more bright ideas, that's probably the best that we're going to be able to do for now.
Great. And there was also a really important question, I think, that came in before the meeting and also during, clearly is close to people's hearts, is looking at how we can best, support the siblings to offer their support for them in various units, and also thinking about the funding that might be needed to do that as well. I mean, lots of parents I know struggle, don't they, with trying to juggle looking after those children at home and their baby, but also ensuring that that bond between the sibling and baby also is created. You got any advice on that?
Yeah, it is really important, and there's quite a bit of evidence out there that shows that siblings need to be incorporated into care. It is difficult. Time, money and space is always at a premium. We in Leeds, we have a sibling support set up called Super Sibs, and that has all been done through the hospital charity, but also is run by volunteers who are all trained and DBS checked, so that they can provide sibling support. And even during COVID, when clearly the children haven't been on the unit, we've managed to provide some virtual sibling support as well. So it is really possible at minimal cost, but it is really, really important to try and bring that family in to ease that stress a bit.
Hi everyone, I'm Neil Patel, just helping with the questions together with Cheryl just now. So Linda, if you're available, a question we'd like to direct to you to begin with. How do you feel in the current restrictions associated with COVID-19 that we can support parents to optimize their time with babies, given the current restrictions, both in terms of time and PPE?
Hi, Neil. Yes, thank you very much. I think a couple of things. First of all, first we have to get the parent there. So many others have commented on that, so I'll leave that one there. Once the parent is there, in terms of PPE, I think if units have single family rooms, to think really carefully about enabling parents to remove their mask when they're with the baby alone, and the health professionals are outside the room, so that the babies can see facial expression. That is absolutely essential for development. I think we all have to advocate for access to masks with clear face panels in them. I know they're under development and they need to be accessible so that people can mask and have that protection, but that there is visibility. And then thirdly, I think this is an area where we can really use technology. I'll just quickly show you a screen. Let's see, hold on. Am I sharing this picture? Yes. Okay. This is really quickly a picture of a music therapy session. So for older babies, we have many babies who are older than 4 months in our unit, and whereas we generally don't want them to have screen time, this is a panel of our music therapists providing with nurses in the rooms holding the babies, but the babies are watching the screen and seeing a human face and listening to music and having some developmental time. So there are ways that we can use technology to our advantage now to support access to human facial expression, and to have positive stimulation for babies who are experiencing restrictions. So those are a few tips.
That's great. Thank you very much, Linda. And perhaps you mentioned single rooms there, Linda, and Nicole, a question that came up that perhaps we could ask you, given that you had a photograph of your own unit and the unit and the single room there for the mother and the infant. Some of the questions that we've been asked related to how do you maintain safety in that environment in terms of monitoring the infant, but also monitoring the mother? What's your experience there?
Oh, so that's an interesting question. I would invite everybody to come into our terrific unit, that's for sure. And you can see that it's absolutely safe as long as you have good monitoring, good systems. All our nurses are able to access other monitors from other rooms so they can see what's going on. They have beepers to see alarms. I think it's all about the culture, about working together, having this culture of being able to provide this holistic care for the whole family, and our nurses are actually telling us that they would never want to do something different.
Fantastic, thanks very much, Nicole. And Cheryl, can I hand over to you for any additional questions?
Thanks, Neil. Yeah. Indeed, yes. There was a question about psychological support, and it's something that I think all units aspire to have, and sometimes it can be difficult. I guess this is a question perhaps for Linda.
Sure, I'll take a quick stab at that. Yes, we've been doing a lot of work to try to understand that as we more and more research comes out on the need for psychological support. At the very first level, nurses and social workers are often the first line psychological support for families, and there's a lot that they can do in terms of both assessment of families' needs and making sure that we have preventative support and coping. And I think the FICARE supports that include peer support, family group education, and other things that are offered in the FICARE program are ideal. And again, we have some nice data showing a reduction in stress and in unpublished data in our own setting around the reduction in mental health symptoms in families who are in the FICARE program. Beyond that, though, it is really important. There are going to be a substantial percentage of families who need additional professional psychological support, and we have to advocate for that access. So some of that, again, starts with screening, and there are universal screening tools for psychological symptoms, and then we really have to work to make sure that there are access to psychologists, to psychiatric support, and each hospital system really needs to work to figure out those logistics to make sure that those services are provided. So again, another advocacy job for us all.
Absolutely, and I think just touching on that about advocating for our services, I think that's similar to those individual rooms which we are just all jealous of. I think there are quite a few questions in the chat about what are the economic implications of that in different healthcare systems. I don't think we'll answer those questions today, but I think, as you all mentioned, it's about advocating for that aspiration. There is a question here, a few questions that are on the same theme that I'd like to pose, maybe to Linda actually, because you did touch upon this and on the answers, and I think it's a really important point. Is that there's a question about, is there a validated tool to measure family integrated care on the unit? But also, that also is in parallel to another question, which said, how long do we expect families to be with their babies in order for them to then, be said that they're providing FICARE? So they're all on the same theme. Did you want to just share? I know you've got many references, but in a snippet of what you think.
Sure. Well, first of all, people are welcome to email me offline, and I'll be able to share things with them directly. I'm happy to do that. But I think the bigger question is part of the advocacy is measuring. So measuring the symptoms that families are experiencing psychologically and making that visible, measuring how much time, and we have very much difficulty in terms of trying to collect data on how much time families are with their baby, and also how much time they're actually involved in their baby's care, whether that be direct care provision or participating in care planning. So our first job is really to do better measurement and really understand the patterns and what's going on and who's being left out, if you will, who's not having access. So we want zero separation. We're starting way far back from that at the moment. So let's look at what we can do to close the gap and start to really make the data available, so everyone in their own unit can start measuring how much time families are with their baby, and also what they're doing in that time, and is that productive time where they're involved in the baby's care, involved in the baby's care planning, receiving support for themselves, as opposed to sitting there worrying and not being engaged. So that's, I think, a really good place to start, and then we can work at what's the optimal, or how do we take the steps towards zero separation.
Thank you. So I presume there's still very interesting work ongoing on that, and that also touches upon another comment about accreditation and things that Liz has also touched upon as well. So thank you very much. I don't know if we've got any more time for questions, Judith.
I think probably now is an opportune time to round things up. I think it really just falls on me to say thank you so much to our wonderful speakers who have given us a really fascinating afternoon. So many things to think about, so many things to take away, to take back to our own units and look at what we're doing and ask ourselves, are we really doing what we think we're doing? Can we do it better? Absolutely inspiring. Thank you so much. The other thing that I would like to say is that I know there are a number of non-BAPM members who've joined us today, which is fantastic. I hope those of you that have been here have perhaps seen the value of BAPM and maybe tempted to take out a membership. We would love to have you come and join the organisation. And other than that, just thank you very much for all the delegates who've come along and joined what I hope you will agree has been an incredibly useful afternoon. Thank you.